Rob Jolly is the CEO and founder of Onto and a former engineer turned entrepreneur as well. Rob, welcome to the podcast today.
Hi, Martin. Great to be here.
So what's your origin story? Let's go superhero origin story. A JLR engineer who was exposed to EVs in the early days and thought, I've got an idea.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, I came into Jaguar Land Rover having been a mechanical engineer by training at Warwick Uni, and then I came in on the graduate scheme at Jaguar Land Rover, which was unbelievable to experience going around different areas of such a big and great business, to be honest. But I ended up leading the product strategy and innovation team at a point where we were starting to explore EVs and with really what would become the Jaguar I-Pace concept coming out the back of that, and was blown away with the experience in driving the Tesla back in whenever it must have been 2013, something like that, and some of the other EVs, but in particular the Tesla. It just blew my mind at what a great experience it was. And then off the back of that and launching the I-Pace concept, I was looking into really how electrification was going to take hold, and to me it really seemed that there was a missed opportunity, that the all-inclusive package that a subscription brings really pulls out the benefits of the total cost of ownership being lower in an electric than actually you'd traditionally have with petrol diesel cars that break down, that have head gaskets that kind of go wrong. And actually it was that time together with the fact that actually, do customers really want to commit to a car for 3-4 years when 90% of new car sales are actually bought through finance, and 70% of those customers don't own the car at the end of that contract? It's not what customers want. They want a low commitment, hassle-free way to drive a car.
So that was then, and this is now. How many cars are in your fleet?
Yeah, so we're now well over 1,000 cars, approaching 2,000 very rapidly, and it's pretty exciting times. I think we're the largest UK electric vehicle fleet and the largest EV subscription service in the world. So growing pretty quickly, doubling in size about every 6 months. So exciting times.
Was it always going to be electric vehicles?
Yeah, so I mean, when we started, to give the context, when we started, it was actually, we started with taxis, and we had a deal with BYD, a Chinese manufacturer, and that was really how we kind of, I guess, got the business started and up and running. It was more car sharing than a subscription service, and the ability, because it's all app based, for customers to swap in and out of different cars kind of on an hourly basis for taxi drivers, so that it fits with their kind of driving behavior and working hours. And really, I guess what we found from doing that was it worked for EVs. It didn't work on a basis that someone might want to work or use a car for 25 hours a day, but actually they just want their own car. They don't want the hassle of coming and picking it up and dropping it off, even if there's slight cost savings to be had there. So I guess it's always been EV. There was never any intention to go down the hybrid route or petrol or diesel. It makes sense because it's EV. But yeah, the model has definitely changed a little bit as we've been going as well.
So you delivered a car to me at the end of last year, the new Jaguar I-Pace HSE EV400, which is a stunning car. And as I spec'd it out on the Jaguar website, with all the fancy roof and everything, because there were some extra options. It's like an £80,000 car. And so, firstly, thank you for doing that. And I had an experience of using the app, and it's like, it's all these things, like, you know, overnight success stories are always funny when I guess you're the founder and you've had all those sleepless nights and, you know, back in the early days and you're washing the car yourself. But the app now really is a pretty seamless process. How does the app that you've got there that I was using a few weeks ago compare to when you were starting out? Because sometimes I do these interviews and you know, the person I'm talking to is the CTO, or they've got the idea, they've written the code, and they've found like the money people. So what did you, in the early days, what was that first app like? How did you do the technology solution?
Yeah, I mean, I'd wish it could be the CTO who was the one who had to answer the 24/7 phone lines when we started, but it wasn't. And I mean, we started with taxi drivers who work in the middle of the night, so the app has come a long way. It's now very stable. It obviously was more like an MVP when we launched 3 years ago. And that meant, I mean, especially with taxi drivers using it who are driving so much, you could really iron out the problems and get direct feedback from them. But yeah, it meant that I'd have a lot of calls at 3 a.m. to say the app wasn't working, and that's not generally a positive conversation when someone's in the cold at 3 a.m. But it's come a long way since then. We've got a big tech team that are working hard, and importantly, we're trying to get customer feedback. We've got a customer forum where we definitely hear it if there's a problem. It's something that you can't shy away from. If the app doesn't work well, and you're locked out of the car, even if it only happens once, you've got the fear that might happen again, and that's not acceptable. That's never going to be acceptable to us. So it's been a lot of development, a lot of customer feedback, but it's very different from the MVP that I guess we launched back 3 years ago or so.
Can you remember the first booking?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first 5 drivers that we all signed up at the same time, and I mean, we got lots of funny stories from back then, because I mean, it was me washing the cars and doing everything, doing the 24/7 phone line, doing the bookings, and Dannon as well from remote because he was living in London. But I mean, the first 5 bookings, the day we were about to launch, or I think it was 2 days before, my brother actually came over to help move cars about and not just crashed one of the cars, he reversed it into one of the Chargers we'd set up at the hub. No. So we've gone through the pains and lessons along the way. The first 5 keys, I mean, because we have a keyless box, we sent them off to a supplier to test how it would work. And I didn't put recorded delivery, and the first 5 keys got lost in the post. So, I mean, there's all sorts of things in hindsight. You think, how did we ever sleep and not lose all our hair?
Yeah, wow. And then, so those first cars were the BYD cars you were using for taxi drivers. What came? Because I kind of became aware of you maybe beginning of 2019, and you were pushing the Zoe pretty hard at that point. That might have just been because those are the cars that you could get. So the EV industry there's a little more supply now as we're recording this in 2021, but go back a couple of years and it was pretty hard to even get a car. So when you had those first 20 cars from BYD, what came next, and what were those conversations like when you were saying, "Oh, we'd like to buy an EV"? That's nice for you. Everybody wants to buy one. Because some of those wait times, looking back at things like the Nero, Kona, when they went on sale, they were 12 months. So what was that like as you tried to scale?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we were very much, when BYD, that we had that deal, it was on a monthly lease at a point where we didn't start with a load of venture funding. I mean, we left pretty well paid jobs, but nice jobs with our own savings and a bit of money from our family and friends. And we're really bootstrapping and had no money to buy the cars, let alone worry about the supply of them. And I guess after a year or so of proving out the model with the BYDs, we then were able, I think we purchased first 20 BMW i3s and then got about 20 Renault Zoes as well. So we were very much at the limits of what cars were available, and we could get supply of the Renault Zoe, we could get supply of the BMW i3, because they were really 2 of only a handful of companies that were offering cars in bulk at that time. And it's got easier with time. I mean, we've had a couple of years to justify to the car manufacturers that they should sell us a lot of cars, and luckily I think with the fleet emissions targets, the legislation that's coming in, the car manufacturers, they have 4-year lead times on designing and manufacturing a car, and it's tied in very well. They knew this was coming for 2020, 2021. So the longer we've been going, the more and more cars are coming out. And yeah, now I think we got 7 different car manufacturers on board, and a couple more that will be announced in the coming few months. So it's becoming easier and easier to get supply, because the car manufacturers are now caught up with, I guess, the development times they had.
And I'm fascinated, back in the early days as well, what it's like picking up the phone to an insurance company, because, you know, if you're Avis or Hertz, I imagine you've got those relationships. But as a new company, where does that conversation start? So, you know, we want to do it electric vehicles, which a lot of insurers know very little about. We want to do it with BYDs, which nobody knows anything about, you know, if I'm being, you know, fair. And it wasn't subscription at the time, and we're going to use an app and it's high tech. Yeah. Did you have plenty of people be like, well, hang on a minute, I don't understand this yet?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much everyone. We had, and I'll be quite open with you, we had one insurer who would insure us, and their quote was £5,000 per car per year. That's what we're doing. There's no negotiation, and we were forced to take it. So, I mean, luckily, we've now got a lot of data points to suggest actually that this isn't an insurance risk, and it's probably less of a risk than petrol, diesel, or a lot of different business models. And we now have a sensible price that's more like what you'd get as an end consumer going. And obviously, with the benefit of insuring anything from a Renault Zoe up to a Jaguar I-Pace, so it covers everyone and every car. So it's been a journey with the insurance as well, and luckily we're not paying £5,000 a car anymore.
Wow! So we have lots of listeners all around the world. Lots of my UK listeners will be aware of your service already, but for those that aren't, you have a technology where the app on my phone talks to a box inside the car, and that's how I unlock the car. It's how I start the car, and that technology, did that exist when you started? Was it an off-the-shelf product, or was that something that you had to work out how to design, and how's that changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of both. So we have some of the hardware shipped in, and a lot built kind of on top of that. There are a lot of companies out there, they're doing it. We're probably, in terms of the scale of doing this, the biggest out there, just because, yeah, having 1,500 cars where everyone is using them daily, and they don't, it's not like kind of, I guess, the car sharing solutions where you often unlock the car and then there's a key in the glove box. We only rely on this, and obviously there's the backup SMS system where if anything goes down on your Bluetooth, we can unlock it for you with a quick phone call. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey with it, and I mean, it's where we see the future going. If you're going to have an all-inclusive and completely digital solution, and really want to be able to move in and out of different cars seamlessly, then do you really want to have to go to kind of a physical retail location and pick up a key and sign some paperwork in paper? It doesn't make sense to us. So we're really trying to build that, and over time you can then pull out more benefits that come with having an app there as well, like the fact that to unlock chargers and use chargers that are included, because we have the kind of BP Chargemaster network, the Shell network, the Tesla network. At the moment, most of those are through an RFID card. Yeah, over time we're working on how they can be integrated. So actually, just by having your phone in the pocket, it means you turn up to the charger and it will start.
Let's talk about usage. Then that was a great. Thank you so much for telling us about the history and the origin of you and the company, and how quickly it's grown. Let's talk about how people use your service. So again, personal experience from a couple of years ago, finding out about what you did. My first thing was to have a look at excess mileage, because I was thinking, I don't know if I can do just 1,000 miles a month. And then fast forward to the end of last year, when you very kindly sent me that car to try out the app and your service. And again, I had that feeling come back of, oh my goodness, it's 1,000 miles, and I know if I exceed it, there's excess mileage that I can pay. But again, maybe I'm an outlier because I buy cars, so I don't lease cars, I don't have finance, so I buy them, so I've never had to think about it. So again, I might be atypical. However, at the end of the month, I'd done about 300 miles, and I'd used the car a lot. So I was like, I got to the end of that experience and thought, well, my perception was very different to reality. And I thought, yeah, I don't need and we've got a new Renault Zoe that's, well, it's a year and a half old now, and I checked, and we've done 10,000 miles on that in 18 months. And I'm like, oh, I think I drive a lot more than I actually do. What are your usage statistics like in terms of your typical, and I know there'll be outliers, there'll be people who do kind of cane it, but what's your typical customer?
Yeah, so I guess to answer the first part of that, the other bit of that is that you could do mileage excess and have to pay for a bolt-on to include that. But actually how our service works, if you have only done 300 miles in your month, that just gets added on to your next month. So actually you could end up with having 3,000-4,000 extra miles, and that then means if you're thinking about going down to the south of France, when hopefully we can at some point in the future, you could be able to drive there, and that isn't kind of an additional cost that you're going to have to pay on the mileage then. So the miles do add up and bolt up when you're not using them, which is obviously pretty important with customers at the moment in lockdown, not using their cars as much. I think the average usage of our car is really interesting, because we see the facts on, I guess, what the average driver drives in the UK, and our customers are driving more than that. So they're driving about 700, 800, 900 miles on average in a month, and it's really important. I mean, if you think about the change we're bringing with I guess even the amount of fuel saved and the amount of CO2 saved, it is actually adding up. I mean, the average customer last year saved 690 kilograms of CO2 being pumped into the atmosphere, and that's equivalent to 30 bags of rubbish, basically the size of your car as a skip of rubbish going to landfill. So it is, our customers are using the car as much as we're finding the average person does, probably slightly more, and it's a really interesting, I guess, dynamic that we'll see how it changes over time, because actually if you know your fuel's included, if you know that it's a bit better on the environment, what we're seeing is customers are using their EV as their main car, and then just have a petrol or diesel, if they have a second car, as the backup, rather than it being the other way round.
The human behaviour side of it was interesting to me as well, because when I've had hire cars before, left them out the front of the house, and it's just a hire car. This, I was obviously parking as the first car in our driveway, and I was putting our own car in front of it. Firstly, because it was an £80,000 car, but we live in an okay area. But also, I was washing it at the weekends because I had it for at least a month, and chances are, I imagine your customers have it for longer. There was this really weird thing going on where I knew the car wasn't mine, but I was cleaning and hoovering it, because I was thinking I want to keep it nice. So I'm kind of more curious about the business model and subscriptions. How, obviously it's not like owning a car, but isn't it interesting how different it is to just renting a car?
Yeah, and I think that's the key difference. This what we're trying to do is have something that's a flexible ownership model. It's not a rental, and our customers aren't using it as something that they generally want for 1-2 months. They're using it as a long-term replacement for their car, and really that's what we're trying to do. I mean, to give a bit of background as well, when I was at Jaguar, I had an XFS, which again, it was a £60,000 car. It's a lovely car. That was a company car that I was paying, not very much money for, and it included insurance, and every 6 months I could change my car, and that definitely was my car, but I could change it every 6 months. It was really high spec, and I was paying a monthly fee for it, and that just to me seemed like an incredible way of owning a car, and that's what we're trying to replace. I mean, PCP makes up 90% of sales, and 70% of those customers don't buy it at the end of it. Customers, it's not most people's car. It just is for a longer period than a 1 month commitment. So with leasing, you're already kind of in that mindset, and really for us, what we like is hearing customers say, my neighbours are confused because they see this every 3 months. They see this brand new electric car on my driveway, and they probably think I'm a drug dealer or something. But that's amazing that customers can feel like they can get the latest, greatest new car whenever they want. There's no hassle, but if they want to stop they can stop. It's not a rental and it's not a lease. It's a subscription, which is somewhere in between.
Yeah, I definitely, at the end of the month, I definitely could have seen myself kind of extending that, perhaps for a period of months, but then maybe by the summer, thinking, I wonder if I fancy a change. But what's the longest that people have had some of your cars for?
Yeah, I mean, we've got customers that are still customers that were in the first few months of us setting it up. So yeah, we've only really been, I think our first group of BMW and Renaults arrived kind of late 2018. So we have some of those still with customers, but we've not got a long enough length of the company being running to really tell where that goes. I guess the other side of it is customers swap, and they might have been on the service the whole time, but a lot of them will have swapped into a newer car. The BMWs and the Renaults that we had to start with have been replaced with better range ones and better technology ones in the meantime. So luckily they're not stuck with a car that is still doing 90 miles range. They've now got one that does more like 200 or more than that range.
And in terms of the experience of owning an EV, and again, people, if they haven't driven one, probably worried about charging. And I always tell people, whether it's on the podcast or friends and family, look, if you can charge at home, you inevitably always do charge at home. But you do provide this solution for people out and about, like they've got the new BP Pulse card. It comes in the glove box, and halfway through my rental, I just got a letter in the post, and you'd sent me the Shell card. But that includes things like Ionity and all of those kind of things. So tell us about why you feel that people charging the car, because this, undoubtedly, it's a cost for your business, whether it's the superchargers or someone's stopping an Ionity charger, because they're not cheap to use. Those costs get passed on to you. So why do you see that as an important thing to invest in?
Yeah, I mean, we see the move to EV is only going to be held up if it's not as good of an experience as having a petrol or diesel car. So as long as you can deliver a hassle-free way to do that, and obviously charging a car for an hour at a rapid charger isn't as good as going to a petrol station. However, if you can offset that by, if you don't have a driveway, plugging it into a lamppost a couple of times a week rather than waiting at a fuel station to recharge, or obviously charging it on your driveway or at work, and then if and when you need to do a longer journey, occasionally rapid charging, that's a better solution. So I mean, we really see that removing the hassle for the end customer and actually removing the scariness about, I don't know where to charge. I don't know, should I actually sign up to getting a BP Pulse charger? Shall I sign up to getting a Shell card? Shall I buy a Tesla because it has the supercharger network? We're trying to answer as many questions for the customer so that it makes it easier for them to transition across. And I think eventually we'll get there where, I mean, it's just the behaviour changes and people realise this isn't a big worry. You're not going to charge it out on the road that often. There will be enough chargers if you live in London to charge on every street corner, and if you don't have off-road charging, or if you actually have a driveway and you'll be charging it at home and not on the road. But it's trying to remove, I guess, that pain point in the meantime.
So a couple of things about the product and the business as well. You've scaled so insanely fast. What have been the challenges of I don't know, onboarding new people, new technology, bringing in external investment in order to get those cars in the doors? Growing too quickly can present its own challenges. As a business, how have you faced those and solved them?
Yeah, it's again a great question, especially with a lockdown, growing a business and trying to be, I guess, as fast moving and kind of scaling and disruptive as you can be when you're not able to work together in the office. And we've hired probably 10, 15 staff in the meantime who we've never seen in person in the office. That's kind of a crazy change in how the business runs. But I think the biggest thing that we're trying to always address is making sure as we grow, the customer experience doesn't fall. And that's something that, we've learnt lessons along the way. We're not there yet. We're never going to be there while we're trying to do something new and trying to grow pretty quickly. But that's key to us, and that's really where we're trying to prioritise it. As much as we want to grow and do everything that is exciting, we want to make sure it's still an easy and pleasant experience for the end customer.
Yeah, we've got to talk about COVID because it's affected every part of all of our lives. How did it affect your business? Because we see those stories of people not wanting to use public transport, more personal transport, because they're worried about just touching things, which is fair. And as we learn more about COVID and we kind of being an airborne virus, we're less worried about touching things now. But back in the early days, people were looking at door handles and certainly the idea of getting in a car that somebody else has been in when we didn't know so much. So when that first hit, what was that like for you guys to put processes in place? And in a minute, I'll talk about the handover that I experienced. But what was that first couple of months, I guess sort of March, April, May, like for you?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it was incredibly scary. I mean, in terms of as a business, we have a 1 month subscription where the UK government said we're going into a lockdown with no end time. So we were terrified everyone would return their cars and what was the business left looking like. And luckily that didn't happen. And actually, I think, yeah, customers still want the security of their own car, and over time more so they want private kind of transport rather than the worries that go with sharing. So I guess it then migrated onto exactly what you said, that how the handover can be as safe as possible, and we've been pretty robust in making sure that handover can be as safe as possible, and kind of taking all the steps to sanitize the cars. And there's always going to be occasions where it's not 100% there and right, but yeah, it's about trying to, I guess, educate the whole supply chain and our drivers that are dropping off the cars to how we do that. But yeah, there's been a lot of lessons for a lot of companies on how to change very quickly to the new world, I guess.
So a couple of years ago, when I first, under a previous name, found you guys, there was some sort of, I think you called them swap sites or handover places. There was London and Birmingham, and I'm like, oh, that's okay, because I don't live in London, but I did go into the office, so I could possibly drive my car in, leave it there, take your car for a month or something, and work it out. But then, when I had that car for the month, you brought it to me. So what's the current situation with customers? Do you take some cars to customers? Do some customers come to you to swap? How does that work?
Yeah, so I guess when COVID hit, we did have swap points in place in car parks, and that was extremely handy for customers using public transport to get there and pick up the car and back. And I guess that had to change with obviously the way the world was and the risks that brought. So our service is now completely digital, through from registering to booking when and where you want the car, and then it being delivered to your house, and then obviously controlled through the app as well. So I mean, yeah, we had to implement that pretty quickly. It now comes with kind of a £50 delivery fee to do that, and £50 collection fee at the end of your subscription. But it's to try and get a safe condition for handover, and we don't want to commit to bring in, I guess, swap points back, because we're at the moment it is too early to say where the world's going. And actually, I think in terms of what customers want, the feedback has been that it's extremely handy and convenient for them. So it probably is for us a long-term pivot into delivering cars to customers rather than having to go to a pickup point to access them.
And finally, apps are a crucial part of having an EV. I say that as a Renault Zoe owner who the app is in fairness, pretty terrible. It's got better recently, but it's kind of, do you want to preheat the car and what's the state of the battery? Some cars, and you go to the other end of the scale, and so that's Tesla. So it's locking and unlocking. It's doing the heating and cooling and being in kind of a lot more control of the car. So if someone has something like a Tesla for a long time, can they use the Tesla app to do that, or does everything have to go through the Onto app? And if you want people to use the Onto app more, how do you then as you put more cars into your fleet, how do you deal with that increase of complexity of building in various different cars' quirks into your one Android and iOS app?
Yeah, so it's a challenging one. I mean, it's about working with the car manufacturers. So with Tesla, we've got an API, and that enables us to roll over the features into our app. But yeah, that's obviously not the same as having the base car app, and it's about working as closely as possible with the car manufacturers as we develop to pull more and more in. We've got a bit more kind of coming in the pipeline in the next few months of a few updates that will be coming through on that kind of related matter. But it's something that, yeah, you rightly point out, the OEM apps in isolation aren't the best, but we should probably, other than Tesla, we'll say, but we should probably pull as much through that is possible, and it's about trying to work closely with the car manufacturers to do that.
Brilliant. Well, look, Rob, thank you so much for your time today. You guys, I don't know when you get time to sleep. You guys are growing so quickly. I really appreciate the time to talk to the listeners today. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Great to speak to you.